Mr. Jacob Nemi, on direct from Wisconsin, the great state of Wisconsin.
Yes, and only a high of a 66 for us today here in
Wow.
Wisconsin, which is like, whew, fall is already upon us. So I was inspired by conversations that we had last week about the connection between language in Psalm 27 and Shema Kolenu from the High Holy Day liturgy. And so I thought I would share with you all
Oh, great.
a little bit of chazanut, a little bit of cantorial music setting of this text. A little bit of a hybrid mashup. The first paragraph by Chazan Isaac Kaminsky, and the latter by a little bit of an adaptation of Israel Alter, who used to be on the faculty at HUCJIR. So this is Shema Kolenu. I'm not used to accompanying Chazanut on guitar for myself, so we'll see how this goes. Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Chuz v'rachem aleinu Chuz v'rachem aleinu v'kabel ברחמים וברצון ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו תשליכנו לעת זקנה כי כלות כוחנו כי כלות כוחנו אל תעזבנו.
Wow, that was spectacular. Love hearing the Chazanut, and I hope everybody saw the similarity in the words, the texts, how similar so much of the language from Shema Kolenu is to Psalm 27. The Shema Koli we have in Psalm 27, the Shema Kolenu of Shema Kolenu, changing it from the pronominal in suffix to the plural for the liturgy tends to be in plural. And the Psalms can be both, but tend to be in singular because they're spoken on the behalf of an individual's voice. And as well as some of those other sentences, we see the same verb for don't abandon me, that sense of don't leave me, don't leave me. The longing is so powerful. Excuse me. God. Penny. Go ahead. I sent to Harold Regina's article. I don't know if you got it, Harold. Maybe you can share.
I did. I just have to post it.
Okay, so we'll post that article maybe in the chat and in the Facebook group so folks can read it It's a wonderful article, and I will post it also on CBST's Facebook page. So anyway, here we are in Psalm 27. We are less than 2 weeks away from Rosh Hashanah. We are over the hump of Elul, moving towards Rosh Hashanah at an ever increasing pace. So today, I'm wondering if we could look at. I want to look at Levy and Bernstein today, if we can.
Yes, we can. Let me open Levy.
And I know that some of you saw I posted yesterday. We did the unveiling of my mother's stone yesterday, just our close family because of COVID, and drank a Glenlivet L'chaim to her. For those of you who heard my eulogy, she loved Glenlivet. So the seasons pass, the seasons pass, and this season is a time of really thinking back on the year. And I think Marcia Melnick mentioned on a post that she goes back to her calendar of last year and looks through the calendar of the year as one prompt, one way to think about the year, and that's a very moving thing to do, to be doing things during this Psalm 27 time of reciting of this Elul month, of really doing whatever you need to do to think back on where the year was last year at this time, globally, personally, and what a year it has been. So this is from this book, the Levy. It's a 2-volume. We've obviously been studying Levy before. He's a rabbi. He's not an academic, which is wonderful, but he's a very, very learned rabbi. So his goal, unlike Alter, is to really find the spiritual meaning. Alter will find spiritual meaning, but Alter's ultimate goal is to try and get as close to the biblical Hebrew in the English as possible. So at the end of each chapter in the Richard Levy volumes, he actually has an essay following his commentary on individual words that's entitled Spiritual Applications. So at the end of each psalm, and he does all 150, he has an essay on the spiritual application of that individual psalm. So that's a lovely element. It's expensive. I've pointed out it's a 2-volume set, but beautiful. And as you can see from Harold's screen, he does what Alter doesn't do for the sake of space, but he has the Hebrew and the English, which is obviously a wonderful thing to have on the same page when it's possible. But what he does do in the Hebrew is to change wherever Yud He Vav He is found in the Hebrew. He changes it to Yud Yud for various reasons, to make it a little. Removes the anxiety about having the 4-letter name of God. But you'll notice what he does do when he has the Hebrew in its entirety, with the exception that Yud He Vav He is indicated by the 2 Yuds. Okay, so just to be aware of that's his way of indicating Yud He Vav He. And he, on all of his translations, he doesn't want to translate God's name, and he doesn't want to use the English word God, or he does not want to use the word Lord. So he just does Adonai in the English. So you see where in the first verse, he, unlike Fisher, includes the of David, but then separates it. You remember in the Fisher translation, Fisher doesn't even include of David or a reference to that, but Levy does. Who would like to read the Levy in English?
All right. Well, hold on. I'll look for a hand. Sherry Dratfield's hand is up. Sherry?
Yeah,
Can you read the English for us?
I'd love to. Thank you.
Hold on. Let me get back to page 1.
Of David. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Psalm 27 of David. Adonai is my light and my victory. From whom should I feel fright? Adonai is the stronghold of my life. From whom should I feel terror? When evildoers approach me in battle to feed on my flesh, my pursuers, my adversaries, they have stumbled. They have fallen down. If a camp encamps against me, my heart will not fear. If a war arises against me, in this would I trust. One thing have I sought from Adonai, how I long for it, that I may live in the house of Adonai all the days of my life, that I may look upon the sweetness of Adonai and spend time in the palace, that you might hide me in your sukkah on a chaotic day. Hide me in the hiding places of your tent. Raise me high upon a rock. Now my head rises high above my enemies round about, and in your tent I'll offer offerings to the sound of teruah. I shall sing and chant praises to Adonai. Hear, Adonai, my voice. I am crying out. Be gracious to me. Answer me. My heart has said to you, seek my face. I am seeking your face, Adonai. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not forsake me. Do not abandon me, God of my deliverance. For my father and my mother have abandoned me, yet Adonai gathers me up. Make your path apparent to me. Guide me in the upright road because of those up ahead who lie in wait for me. Do not hand me over to the lust of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, puffing violently. Had I not the faith that I would see the goodness of God in the land of life? Wait for Adonai. Fill your waiting with hope in Adonai. Let your heart be strong and of good courage, and wait hopefully for Adonai.
Thank you.
Beautiful reading, Sherry. Thank you so much. So any initial thoughts about Levy's overall exploration of this psalm, approach to the psalm, feelings that it evokes, or responses you have to it?
Any and yet. And I apologize. Somehow the screen didn't scroll from page 1 to 2, but everybody was sent a PDF of this. Everyone should have it in their email. Sarah Siegel.
I'll just ask my chat question aloud. Is Adonai, is the translation my master? And if so, is that like such an ideal solution for?
Good point.
Yeah.
So to trace it back, how is, yes, Adonai literally means my Lord. Really, Adon is a Lord or so it becomes master. And I, of course, so Adonai means my Lord or my master, as you said. How did that become the translation for Yud He Vav He? And so it became because of the word Lord being associated with the big name of God and Adonai. But if you look, actually, the vowels, if you were to write Adonai, this is so complicated, but if you were to write Adonai, so let's look back at this. So what they do is they have the Shva and the Kamatz are actually the vowels for the word of Adonai. So that because it became the rabbinic convention, Yud He Vav He would get translated as Adonai. Now, what Sarah's asking is a very sophisticated question. So that's the convention, to always translate Yud He Vav He as Adonai. But so what he's banking on, so to speak, is that you don't know a Hebrew so well. I agree with you, but what he's banking on is that the word Adonai is less offensive than Lord, because everybody knows Lord and feels Lord, and that's so archaic in English, and colloquially for many people Adonai gets used to mean God. So people don't hear it as much as my Lord, they just hear it as a Hebrew word for God. In general, Sarah, I agree with you, but you'll notice if you ever look at the CBST Siddur, that when we did that Siddur, there is no reason to say the word Yud He Vav He Adonai in place of any other word, right? It's a complete random use of a Hebrew word, so you don't say Yud He Vav He. So for instance, in our CBST Siddur, we struggled with this, but since most people, when you do a Siddur, you have to struggle with the reality that you don't want to, if people are coming in with very limited background, you don't want to make them feel like they don't know what's going on by using language they don't know. On the other hand, you want to keep increasing the depth through which you approach the prayers themselves. So what we did, for instance, if you have a Siddur, if you looked at page 78 of the CBST Siddur, which I'm holding up, is the page of the Baruch Hu. And we give two options there where you can read Yud He Vav He either as Adonai, which is the rabbinic convention. Everybody knows it. They even think that Yud He Vav He is Adonai, but there is no reason to read it as Adonai technically. Convention-wise, tradition, history, custom, yes, but technically no. So we have the Yud He Vav He being read as Adonai here, but so down here it says Baruch, the transliteration, Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed. So we do it as Adonai in this transliteration, but on this side, the transliteration in the Hebrew is exactly the same for the name of God, but we feminize the verbs, and we translate Yud He Vav He as Shechina. There's no reason you can't say Shechina when you say Yud He Vav He. It's as legitimate grammatically as it is to say Adonai. So we put this in here as a little bit of a challenge, and we leave it up to this. Sometimes people sing it with the Shechina, but we don't want to, we have to balance out confusing people, and we don't want them to feel like they don't know what's going on. But technically, grammatically, Sarah, you're right.
One more question, one more follow-up to that. Could we all just say Hashem, or is that supposed to be, which means the name? Like that's my personal solution when I'm
I think we leave it up to people to make their personal choices. I don't think we'll dictate that, but people can certainly make that choice.
We wouldn't want to dictate. I'm just saying, like, or is Hashem so from the Orthodox always what you say when you don't want to, say, I don't know. I think
Hashem is a very good. Now, obviously, Levi he's a translator, so he gets to choose what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And he probably didn't want to, if you wrote Hashem, it probably would sound too frummy, and he probably didn't want to do that. But I don't know, but you could certainly say it. I often say it. Sometimes when I read the Hebrew, I say Hashem, which means the name, meaning the four-letter name of God. And when you say Hashem, you're referring to that Yud He Vav He. If people are comfortable doing that with that. But people are also, they've reconstructed what the word Adonai itself means, and it no longer, to many people, means the masculine my Lord. So that's okay too.
Rabbi, a few other points.
Yes.
Yael brings up a fine point of Hebrew grammar where Adon is the singular, and if I were a servant actually speaking to an earthly master, in the Bible, it's Adon, like El Adon.
Yes.
Adonai is plural possessive, where Adoni would be singular possessive. Is that because Elohim has a plural formation?
Maybe. I don't know what the origin is. That would be a very interesting kind where Adonai altogether got used. It's correct. Adoni, and you could say Adoni in modern Hebrew. And like bus drivers say that. I don't know, Yael, do you ever say Adoni? You'll hear a bus driver say that to somebody.
It's like saying sir.
Sir, yeah.
Yeah.
The category of people I most hear it from are bus drivers, and speaking to like somebody you don't know their name but you want to address them respectfully, you'll say Adoni.
And I pulled out the Reconstructionist Siddur, where this is one of the things that they do. They just vary it. In one page, they translate Adonai, and they use small caps, initial caps, as the Redeemer, the Eternal, the Sublime One, the Radiance, the Living One, the Magnificent, the Great One, Majesty, the Incomparable, and the Eternal.
The reason they do that is that there are 70 different ways to refer to God by God's characteristics. And it's a very famous Rambam. Maimonides says, we really can't have a name for God because we can't know God. What we can know are God's characteristics. So what the Reconstructionists did when they did their Siddur, and one of the things I like very much, although a lot of people find it really bizarre, but they take that Rambam teaching and they take the understanding that there are 70 names of God, and what they do is say, okay, so let's explore it, because let's explore all the different ways we can understand God by God's attributes or characteristics. Compassionate one, merciful one, loving one, patient one, luminescent one, all the different, so they become the characteristics rather than saying God has a name. And I think it's a very, very creative. It did not catch on beyond that Reconstructionist Siddur in Machzor, but I like it very much. And a lot of people make fun of it because sometimes sometimes the names they use are kind of sound a little silly in English, but they all exist in Hebrew. That's the interesting thing. They're not making it up, but sometimes some of these words sound a little sillier in English than they do in the Hebrew. You know, it's hard, but some of them, like merciful one, compassionate one, all that makes sense to us. I'd have to look through it to pull out the examples I don't have in my head. But I think that was when they did their Siddur and Machzor, that was how they approached this very problem. They don't want people to get, and this is a challenge we all have. You don't want people to just say, oh, okay, there's the word God. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a white guy with a long beard. So I'm alienated. Poof, start off alienated. And that's, how do you break that down when you try and create prayer and say to people it's more complicated and it takes more chewing on it and relationship building than just that. So I admire their effort. So what we did at CBST is because people come into a Friday night service, we want both beginners, people who haven't been in a service for 40 years to feel comfortable, and people who know a lot to feel like this is a rich, deep experience. So we tried to balance out all of those challenges in creating a prayer book, which is very different than an academic book. Really different, because we want people to study it, and people will learn a lot about who we are studying this. But we want people to be able to pray with it foremost, and it be meaningful. So that's why our English isn't always an exact translation, because we want an English like Alter, but we want it to reflect the Hebrew. But we want a native English speaker to say, that's moving to me in English, not just because I know, wow, that's a clever way. We didn't try clever, ways to approach stuff. We tried to make it that it would be meaningful to somebody who doesn't. And yeah, so we tried to do all of those things. All right, other responses to Levi. First of all, note the things I want you to always notice at the beginning. He tries to stay with the structure of the psalm, unlike Fisher and Bernstein. So you'll see 14 verses in the original, 14 verses in his translation. He includes the of David, the superscription, but makes it separate on the layout from that first verse. So all those things are good to start soon as you approach a first-time translation. Are they staying with the architecture at all? Not because I'm valuing it, just to understand what the interpreter is trying to do. And he wants you to know there are 14 verses. That's important to him. He wants you to see that the architecture of it. Fisher and Bernstein, one from a Buddhist tradition, the other from a personal Orthodox position, don't care about how many verses there are. They don't care about the parallelisms necessarily. They care about how do they make that. So that's why I want you to see these different styles. One is not more valuable than another, and it's really fun to look at all of them. I want to say one other thing before we go to other comments. The Adonai Ori, Back to the Light. I hope people enjoyed the Friday night, my drosh about light and the season. And Harold, I knew I wasn't entirely wrong about the Yale slogan. You were right that it was University of whatever it was, Oxford, or that did the actual first sentence. Was it Oxford?
So Oxford University Press has Dominus Illuminatio Mea. Actually, Yale is very different. Yale is Urim V'Tumim. Yes, right there.
Right there. Which
so
had
Hebrew. So the Hebrew is Urim V'Tumim, right?
Yes.
The two stones in the Choshen of the breastplate of the high priest, correct? But they translated it as Lux e Veritas, light and truth, sort of improperly.
Well, no, tumim can mean simple. Tumim can also, there's a lot of discussion about it, but tumim can mean direct or simple, or so that's how they got to the veritas part.
It's also a play against the Harvard came first, and they just had veritas.
Oh, so they added light.
So they added
I just wanted to point out light is in the Yale logo.
Absolutely. Luke's
Yeah.
Jeremy has his hand up. Jeremy Lawrence.
I just wanted to say that I think that the Levy is very emotional.
Tell us, Jeremy.
Well, I feel it all the way through, but especially now One thing I have sought from Adonai, how I long for it.
I know. I love that. I love that.
I mean, it's direct expression of
Yes.
emotion.
Yes. I
The
can.
other,
Yep. Go
the
ahead.
other, the other thing that I love is in the spiritual applications. On page 100 at the bottom, he says the month of Elul is considered an acronym for Ani Lidodi Vidodi Li. I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine from Song of Songs, which I loved learning that.
Isn't that beautiful? So, did everybody get that? So, Elul is Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. So, it's often commented that it's an acronym. It stands for Ani, Lidodi, Vidodi, Li. I did a wedding 2 weeks ago, right after Rosh Chodesh Elul, and I quoted that as part of my wedding talk. It's a very beautiful from the Song of Songs. So it's a very thank you, Jeremy. That's what I mean. I like his spiritual application essay part. It's a very lovely thing that he does, and he's trying to create a body of spiritual responses to the Psalms that's not just reading from Art Scroll, which does or the Orthodox ones. He really tries to build a beautiful body of response. I'm sorry, Jeremy. Please continue.
No, I just, his translation particularly attracts me because I have felt from the very beginning that Psalm 27 is a love song.
Yes, that's beautiful. I want to read from his spiritual application, by the way, on page 101, a personal word about this psalm. When I was jailed in St. Augustine, Florida in June of 1964 with 16 other rabbis from the Central Conference of American Rabbis, before the rallies that resulted in our short imprisonment, Dr. Martin Luther King, who had invited us to join him in this demonstration, was searching through his Bible for an appropriate psalm to rally us to what lay ahead. I found out many years later that the one he read to us was this one, and his reasoning was clear. In a city run by the Ku Klux Klan to exhort us all, blacks and whites, men and women, young and middle-aged, to emulate the poet's faith, that the Lord, the way I'm sure he read Adonai, is my light and my victory, from whom should I feel fright, was the greatest confidence booster I can imagine. If a camp encamps against me, the Klan, a phalanx of the National Guard whose sympathies were in doubt, local townsfolk who still sold fruits and vegetables where blacks had once been sold in the city's old slave market, we determined, as hard as they might be pounding, that our hearts would not fear. That June night was very dark, but all of us knew a great light. So what a beautiful association with Psalm 27 to go into the season thinking about King reading this to those rabbis. I knew a couple of those rabbis, by the way. One was the grandfather of our Cooperberg Ripmaster rabbinical intern, Sophie Motzkin Rubinstein. So, oh God, she had the longest name. Ruchi Sophia Motzkin Rubinstein.
Right.
Her grandfather Rubinstein was one of those rabbis in the jail, and they did a gathering recent 2 or 3 years ago of all of the children and grandchildren of those rabbis in St. Augustine. Anyway, other reactions to Levi?
I was at that demonstration, by the way.
You were in St. Augustine?
Yeah, I was at Jacksonville University.
Wow.
And I heard about it and went down to St. Augustine. I did not get arrested. I ran away.
Okay.
I was there. There.
Wow, Dvorah, that's so meaningful. Thank you.
Well, when I arrived in Jacksonville, Florida, the water fountains had a word on it called colored. And I had never seen that.
By the way, in St. Augustine, their farmers market is actually still in the location of where the slave auction was.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, other responses to Psalm 27? I just thought this was a beautiful thing, given our moment in history, also to see how it can be used to read this psalm before going into a literal battle of the soul for our country.
Rabbi, I have a scan of our Siddur, B'chol Levavka, if you want to show how we translated it for ourselves.
Sure, but does anybody else want to react to this one? And then that would be nice to see.
I don't have any more hands up, nor do I have anything in chat about Levy.
So I just want to point out a couple, go back to it. Let me just point out a couple of things quickly. So you see few things that Trua is translated just with the transliteration, that he wants to, because I think that Levy wants you to hear the sound of the shofar. He doesn't even translate it to a blast. You'll see some people translate it blast or you know, some kind of big sound. He leaves it, which I kind of like. I like that the sound of Trua. And I also, along with what Jeremy said, I find this very emotional too. Hear Adonai my voice. I am crying out. Exclamation mark. Be gracious to me, answer me. I just find the rhythm here very, very, very beautiful, and I like his translation very much for Jeremy's reason. And also he doesn't translate sukkah. He leaves sukkah but you'll notice, by the way, what Trua is in italics, and sukkah is not in italics. By the way, thank you, Ira Rosenblum. He sent me a fantastic explanation of the M dash, which I never understood before, which is really important for all these translations. Is Ira here? If not, maybe one day he'll
Ira is here.
Yes, I am here.
Ira, I never understood that before. Would you explain it to folks? Are you?
They both have their computers on. They just have to turn one down, otherwise
Yeah,
they
we
get.
did.
Oh.
And I am here.
So I never understood the M dash. I'm horrified to admit, but maybe you'll explain it.
Well, the reason I sent that to you is because you said the other day that it sort of served as an ellipsis.
Right, which was how I mistakenly understood.
And so I thought it would be edifying.
Yes.
I actually learned something that from the article I sent you and read, that it's according to that article. I didn't research to see if it's accurate, but I always believed something that the writer of that article said is a myth, which I believe that the M and N dashes were the width of the letter M and the letter N when they were individually typesetting. The writer said that's a myth, so I don't really know. But the M dash is really, in my mind anyway, sort of like commas on steroids. When you want to actually really emphasize a clause in the middle of a sentence and make it more powerful than separating it with commas, an M dash.
And they're physically longer than a hyphen. So that,
yes,
right.
The lengths in ascending order are hyphens, N-E-N dashes, which are basically used sort of if you want to give a value of from this date to that date. We are from June through August. You could use the N dash, and the M dash is the longest one, and that's the one that really sort of throws a spotlight on a clause that you want to really emphasize.
Well, fascinating, and it's important because it gets used a lot in the Psalms. So this is really, and translations of the Psalms use a lot of them. So thank you, Ira, for that. I appreciate that very much.
Sure.
So one more thing, if we could go down to the next part of this, Harold, I just wanted to point out. Notice how he, with the Hebrew, which I appreciate, doesn't say my mother and father, which a lot of the translators do, because I like in the Hebrew very much, it says avi ve'imi. And there's a focus, my mother, my father, and that's a very small thing, but he maintains that in the English, which I like it very much. And yeah, so those are things I think I like this. Again, we've pointed out that this is this whole 11 and 12, the Hebrew is not all clear, so you'll see a lot of differences, but I like this puffing violently as a translation of this. These 11 and 2, the Hebrew, we're not going to spend a lot of time because these aren't, but it's just they're a little strange, and so it's interesting to see how the different people translate it. And here he has in 13, I guess that is an ellipsis at the end of 13 with an M dash in 14, so we have both. And I think that the ellipsis there is important so that you see that 13 kind of fades out a little bit. It's almost like a had I not. You almost can't. You almost don't have words to finish the sentence. It's a little bit of a wisp at the end, and then the kaveh. Now it's interesting because he translates kaveh as weight, which I think is interesting because I would associate it more with the word for hope. So it's just very interesting. These things are worth looking at. And so shall we look at CBST or Bernstein? Or do we
Rabbi, I
have
have one quick question here on the lule. Those little dots above and beyond, am I correct that those come from the manuscript tradition? Let's see if he has
Let's see
a note
what he-
on 13.
Yeah, and third, what's his note?
Note is,
He doesn't really speak about those.
I'm gonna take a look at the manuscript and see what I can, well, not the manuscript, but
I just don't know. I don't know if Cantor Nimi knows anything about that. I don't. But we could, I'm sure I could look, that would be easy to look up. So lula is a what's a word? Combination of a few words, but in Hebrew, when the words get combined, different letters get lost. So it looks like it's the word ilu, which is
would that,
but with a negative. So lo, you see the second part of the word is lo, the negative. So would that I not, or had I not. It's a very, it's a combination of those things. All right, can we look at Bernstein actually before CBSA? I know we don't have a lot of time today, so we'll finish, but I want you to see. So
Bernstein.
I hope people are being inspired in their own relationship to this psalm.
Okay.
So there's Bernstein or Bernstein. Bernstein, by the way, for pronunciation, most Eastern European Jews pronounce the steen ending in Yiddish was steen, and Jews who wanted to use something which we call in Yiddish hoich Yiddish, which means, how shall we say, a little high Yiddish, wanting to sound a little bit more upper class, would say Bernstein instead of Bernstein. Greenstein instead of Greenstein. But it's called Hoich Yiddish when it's in the Stein or the Steen, but it's families get to choose their own pronunciation. So as I said, now we don't have any of the superscription is gone. Unlike Fisher, because Bernstein is Orthodox, she's comfortable using the word for using God. But like Fisher, she doesn't care how many verses there are. She doesn't care. What she wants to accomplish is writing her own psalm based on these themes to make sense to her. So, would somebody like to read this English? Who has not read?
Allison Klein has had her hand up, not for this, but
Oh, okay, Allison?
would you like to read this?
Or would you like to say something?
I just wanted to mention, I'll be happy to read it too, but I wanted to mention, I was looking at the picture and there was a line that I found extraordinary, and I wasn't sure what the equivalent would be on the other one we were looking at, but it was after the verses of one thing I asked for. On a doomful day, fill me in your precincts, conceal me within the folds of your covering tent, place me high and safe upon a rock. And then I love this, my head lifted above the engulfing waves.
Whose translation is that?
Norman Fisher.
Oh, Norman Fisher, yeah.
So my question was, when I try to follow along and see either's interpretation, I didn't really see where the waves, with the engulfing and the waves came in, with Levy and the other.
Well, that's the point. He's trying to make something meaningful to him. He's not just translating the Hebrew. And that's where I encourage all of us, when we're writing our own, you don't have to stick to what the Hebrew says. It's how would you use words that would make sense for whatever, from the meaning of it.
But the reason why I asked is because later, when you're referring to my mother and my father, he does say my mother and father. So it was kind of, looking from one to the other.
Because
But yeah,
it's not that
they
it's not that, well, because the point is he's not just rejecting the Hebrew, he's trying to make this meaningful to him. And clearly it's based on the Hebrew, but he's going to write it as it becomes meaningful to him.
So would you like Allison to read the
I
Bernstein?
doubt Fisher can read Hebrew. I doubt he's working from the original Hebrew.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised I own 3 books of Psalms.
Uh-huh.
I would never believe that. Anyway, of course, that's the result of this class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read it. Where do I start? Look inside the me of
No,
me?
start at Psalm 27 on the
God.
screen.
God, with you, lighting my way, shielding me, what could I fear? You've saved me before. I've seen them fall, those who conspire to devour me. I've seen them, armies of them, weaken and fall. Now my heart has no fear, only desire for your ongoing presence. Let me into the safety of you when times get tough again. I go, open your gates to me, welcome me, shelter me, nourish me. Let me in. I'll get strong and face them. Yet again and win again, and let them know you arm me. I'm orphaned and alone at war. I need your arms. I need to trust to know you're here, lighting my path, giving me hope, and showing me the way out.
So we don't have a lot of time today. We'll start with this one tomorrow. But do you see how she lets go of the architecture? She lets go of the superscription. God, Yud Hey Vav Hey Hashem, is mentioned 13 times in the original. She mentions God's name once in the beginning, and the entire thing is addressed to God, but without multiple references, right? It's just, there's you referring directly, and it's very much directly to God. Any other reactions to this?
Let's see. If anyone raised. Saul Zalkin has raised his hand.
So I'm guessing that the third section is beginning with verse 4. And she's describing exactly what will happen in God's shelter, in the palace or whatever.
Yes.
Welcome, nourish me, everything.
So I think, yeah. And I think, you see how she doesn't talk about God's palace here, but gates opening and welcoming. You're right. That's beautiful. She's describing what the experience will be like, not the way the initial psalm does it. Very interesting, Saul. Thanks. I think we're going to have to end here, but we'll start with Bernstein tomorrow. I just have 2 quick announcements before we sing out. And is that we have a special guest tonight in the Meet the Machzor. I'm thrilled. I mentioned last week that Rabbi Jan Urbach, who's responsible for all the feminism and a lot of the poetry, will be joining the class tonight and just talk about what it was like to edit the Machzor and some of the choices they made. So I'm thrilled with that. And on Wednesday, for this class, Rabbi Noah Satat is going to join us from Israel to talk about what's going on in the genderqueer Hebrew movement in Israel for modern Hebrew speakers. So that's come up here a bunch, and I've talked to her a lot about it. And so I thought it would be really fun, because those of us who are beginners in Hebrew, we learn very strict rules about agreement of nouns and verbs and adjectives, etc. And there's a whole movement in Israel to queerify modern Hebrew. And so she's going to join us on Wednesday and talk to us about what's happening also in God language. For instance, the feminist, there's a use of God's name in Hebrew now in Israel called Elohimah, which that's happening now in Israel. So it's not, so I thought that'd be a really interesting discussion about Hebrew. And so she'll be our Wednesday special guest teacher.
All right.
And you're welcome to invite other people you think might be interested in that topic to come to the class on Wednesday.
So if Randy can't say, wait, we're waving to Randy to thank her on
Okay.
Labor Day for her leadership of, wait, let's see, Randy Weingarten will say hello to us for 1 minute.
Here comes Randy to wave on Labor Day. Everybody wants to cheer you and wave on Labor Day.
Yay, Randy.
Happy
Thank
Labor
you.
Day, everybody.
One of the
Let's
leaders.
go out and vote, like your lives depend on it.
All right.
And Randy, if people want to get your letter that goes out from the AFT, they just go to the website?
Yeah, just sign up for, it will be on the top of the website. I'm putting it on the top of Twitter right now. But it will be, if you want to become an e-activist with us, just go to our website and say you want to be an e-activist, or tell me and I will sign you up. Like, email me and I'll sign you up. What?
AFT.org. Right?
AFT.org.
AFT.org.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you. Happy Labor Day. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for all the work everybody does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Shema Kolenu.
All right. And just to say, there's actually this mode has a particular name. It's actually called Slicha mode, forgiveness mode. It's really it's an Ashkenazi Eastern European mode that is ubiquitous for the Holy Day season. It's characterized by like a opening 1 4 3 3 1 and then ending with a 2 5 2 1. So you'll hear that throughout the Chazanut, but with lots of embellishment. I don't know if what other folks are seeing, but on my screen
Okay.
it's black.
All right. Well, then that is not what I'm trying to show. It's not on my screen. How's that?
Wonderful. All right. Shema Koleinu Adonai Eloheinu Chus v'rachem aleinu Chus v'rachem aleinu v'kabel v'rachamim uv'ratzon ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, כי כלות כוחנו, כי כלות כוחנו. אל תעזבנו.
Thank you. That is gorgeous. So moving. Thank you. True, I've never heard guitar with Chazanut, and you make it work. Thank you. All right, everybody, the room will stay open for a few minutes, and we'll see everybody tonight, hopefully at 6 o'clock for the second of our 3 sessions about the Machzor, and tomorrow morning. Happy Labor Day, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Happy Labor Day, everyone.
Happy Labor Day.
Thank you.
Could somebody please explain this Havaya thing? I don't understand.
Donna, okay. Is Yael here? Yael
I'm here. I'm here.
Jacob's here.
I will let either one of them do that.
So Donna, remember the song Adon Olam? Vehu haya, vehu hove, vehu yihye betif'ara, right?
Yes.
The end of it. So those three words, haya, hove, yihye, means was, is, and will be. And it has the same letter as the Yud Hey Vav Hey, and also the same letters as Havaya. Havaya basically means being, B-E-I-N-G, being. And so, you know, Jacob can probably talk more about that. But for me, as a Hebrew speaker, it has the same letters, Havaya, as Yud Hey Vav Hey, in a different order. And it makes it seem to me as if the word for God means to be or being. And to me, it speaks much more than this image of the white man on, you know, with a long beard on a cloud. It simply means, you know, everything around us, everything that exists, existence or being. And it also, for me, has the added advantage that the word Havaya is in the feminine. And so existence or being in the feminine really speaks to me.
And that that kind of all-encompassing like being, that kind of the ultimate gerund of existence, is one of the reasons why you'll see that it's used really commonly in like Reconstructionist and renewal Jewish spaces. So when like Rabbi Shefa Gold or Shir Yaakov write musical settings, they don't use it all the time, but they'll frequently make use of it. And so you'll see it a lot in those kinds of spaces.
Thank you very much.
And Harry Beckman says, does it have any connection to the Hebrew word for Eve, which is Chava? No, because I think it's
off by a letter. Chava is related to the word Chaim, for life, giver of life.
Right. It has the word chet, the letter chet in it, which Havaya does not have.
Right. And also, you know, being, we call God the divine being, right? So
also, there was a New York Times thing this weekend about people reappropriating Broadway show tunes, and they were like, I Am What I Am being sung. I can't remember by whom, but as an opposite of what you'd expect. So I am what I am, you know, I love this.
Gary Orbach.
Thank you. But Kantronimi, I also wanted to say, this is just a confession that every time since I was a kid that I'd hear